Hey, this is a last call situation regarding my newly upgraded live stream subscription service. If you've been around for the last few weeks, you've heard me talking about this. I have a live stream subscription service that offers 4 new live classes with me each week. And if you can't make it there live, the most recent class is always available 24/7. So there's always a class whenever you want to take it. And recently we upgraded it. We made it a entirely interactive 2-way experience, and it has been fantastic. A number of you podcast listeners have signed on in the last few weeks, and it's been wonderful to have practice with you. I've really been enjoying it. And I'm mentioning it now because the official launch is September 1st, and the price is going up 20%. But if you subscribe now, you can lock in the current rate indefinitely. So now's a good time to check it out. It's the J Brown Yoga live stream subscription. You can find it at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, here we are. You ready? I'm ready. This is J Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is J Brown. Welcome, new person. Thank you, returning listener. How is everyone doing? Are these last days of summer treating you well? I certainly hope so. What have you been doing? Have you been laying around and being lazy with the weather? Or are you like a parent like me and your kids go back to school next week, so there's this mad rush to squeeze in summer activities? I got totally guilted into a thing yesterday, but it turned out good. I'll tell you about it. But before I do, today on the show, I have Mark Whitwell here, and it's always significant for me to have Mark on. This is only the second time he's been here. I encourage you to go back and listen to the first talk I recorded with him 3 years ago. I talked some about why it's significant. He was an important teacher to me. I'm sure many of you have had a similar experience where a particular teacher teaches you something at a particular time that really shapes you. Well, I had that with Mark. And it's challenging in a sense when I know someone almost too well to bring them on the show. Like when I've never met someone before at all, it's very much about getting to know them and see if we can develop a little bit of rapport, right? And then sometimes when I know someone a little bit, like I know them through their work, then that's kind of ideal. But when I know someone for as many years and when that person played such a significant role in my own personal development, you know, even though I don't feel that Mark ever put himself in any kind of way above me and has always embraced me as a peer, still, he was one of my teachers, and so there's always a little bit of that in there. And I don't see him very often, but just a month or so ago in Japan, we were together, and it was such a rare occasion, I felt I couldn't let it pass. So I made no plan for myself. I didn't even really think about it too much, because if I did, I think I would have overthought it. And I just set up some time for us to get together in my hotel room in Tokyo. And I just hit record, and that's what you're going to hear today. Now, before we do, real quick, I want to say something to all of you who are listening to this and are doing your best to make a living, or at least a partial living, or at least a supplemental income from teaching yoga. I'm sure you've realized by this point that being able to accept a credit card payment, and in particular, a recurring payment, if you're doing any kind of yoga online, if you're offering classes online, or you're doing any kind of mentoring groups, and you're using video calls, and you're setting up subscription services with people, you need a way to do that easily. And it's a longer conversation that I'm thinking of having in the future when it comes to using different portals to do it. But there's a way to do it on your own. And a lot of people use PayPal, but PayPal is a nightmare. If you've tried to use it, you know. So what I use is Moonclerk. And you might remember they sponsored the show some while back, and I'm happy to be working with them again. Moonclerk is a way to take recurring payments or one-time payments in a totally efficient, simple, user-friendly way on both sides for you and the students that you're going to be working with. And I have not only been using it for years, at this point, I'm trying to shift everything over to it. I'm no longer using PayPal with new products. We're trying to get away from PayPal and just use Moonclerk because it really is the best way to go, believe me. So listen, go check it out. Go to jbrownyoga.com/Moonclerk. That's jbrownyoga.com/MOONCLERK, Moonclerk. And make sure to go to that address first so they know that we sent you. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Okay, so I wanted to mention this thing yesterday real quick, where if you're a parent like me and your kids are going back to school on Monday, there's this feeling like, oh, did we do enough as a family this summer? And we were supposed to go on this trip together that ended up getting canceled. So we did a lot of stuff. We went to the lake and we did stuff around here and we explored we did kind of staycations, right? But there's still this feeling of like, did we do enough? So my wife basically guilted me into taking the whole family to an amusement park. And we've gone to amusement parks before in the past, but they were young. We had to use the strollers, and it was just a nightmare. But now they're older, and she really wanted to have one more big summer memory-building thing. And we have a number of different options in terms of amusement parks around here, but we ended up choosing to go to Knoebels. Do you know Knoebels? A few people listening right now, maybe who live in Pennsylvania, know what I'm talking about. If you live around here, you totally know what Knoebels is. But if you don't live around here, which is me up until very recently, you would have no idea. And that is how it's pronounced. Knoebels, spelled Knoebels, Knoebels. And I'm not pronouncing it wrong, but I have to say, Knoebels completely won me over. I woke up in the morning and I could not have been in a worse mood. I don't want to go into it, but I was just stressing about some things. And the last thing in the world I wanted to do was go to an amusement park and wait around in lines and have my daughters fight. And oh my God, it's the last thing I wanted to do. I already had yelled at my daughters before we got in the car to go there. And I just thought, oh man. But fortunately, a number of things lined up. One, Knoebels is incredibly charming. It's not like other amusement parks I've been to. It's not like a big Six Flags thing. It felt way more intimate. It was sort of in the forest. There was trees everywhere. It was very independent-y feeling and down-home kind of feeling. And the weather also completely smiled on us. It was like 70 degrees, so we weren't sweating. And my daughters were they didn't fight. And we stayed there for like 9 hours. And by the time we were done, we all loved Knoebels. We just could not have had a better day. We ate funnel cakes and crap, and we had fun on crazy roller coasters, and it was a good day. It was a really good day, and I'm glad we went. And let me give a shout out to my friend Sarah, who came up to me while I was at Knoebels to tell me that she was a listener of this show. I can't tell you how much fun that was for me, Sarah. It's never happened before. That was the second first. First time I ever been to Knoebels. First time I ever had somebody come up and recognize me from this show in a totally non-yoga space. And it was very funny. I was very conflicted in the moment. I really wanted to chat it up with you some. You said, I listen every Monday, and your conversations have really got me thinking about stuff. And I wanted to know, well, what have you been thinking about? I really wanted to get into it with you, but I was under some strict rules. It was supposed to be like a non-yoga day of sorts. I was supposed to not be recording any podcasts or writing any blogs or working. I was supposed to be doing the family time thing. And I was very sort of in that mode and cognizant of it. But it was so fun that you came up to say hello. And I know you're listening, so thanks, Sarah. I appreciate you listening and introducing yourself. It meant a lot to me because sometimes I feel that this podcast can connect me to like a lot of different people in a lot of different places, but I sometimes wonder whether it's getting in the way of me connecting to people who are like right here where I live, so that you're right around where I live and you listen to. It meant a lot, and it was fun to run into you at Knoebels, which is really a gem, really a fun place. And why am I telling you about all this? I don't know. It's the end of the summer moment, and I'm looking for those positive moments where I feel human, because there's all this other tragedy happening, and I was debating whether I should be talking about the burning rainforests and the dumpster fire of politics around the world, and I've just decided that on this day, this afternoon, as I'm recording this to you, I wanted to think about something that made my heart sing. So I hope that's okay. And other than that, let's see, is there anything? Yeah, I got a couple gigs coming up. I'm going to be at the Central PA Yoga Love Fest, September 28th. I'm going to be at the Yogi Underground in Falls Church, Virginia, October 5th and 6th. You can find out about those gigs and more. Find out about all of my stuff at jbrownyoga.com. And with that, I think we are good. I will touch base with you on the other side. I'll tell you a little bit about some things that are happening next week and beyond. But for now, let's just get into this. Let's go to Tokyo, Japan, into a hotel room with me and Mark Whitwell. Well, Mark, I was trying to get ready for you to come over and for us to do this. First of all, we have recorded a talk together before, but it was 3 years ago, and it was a phone call. We were not in the same room.
I remember.
And we were last here together in Japan 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I actually have audio recordings. I mentioned them to you that I made. It was long before I even knew what a podcast was. Mm-hmm. I was doing research for an idea I had. I want to write a book, if you remember.
You wanted to write a book about lineage.
Yes.
Parampara.
I wasn't calling it that, but yes, I was asking you about Yuji and Desikachar, because for years I heard you saying all these things in your workshops. And it's part of what I want to talk to you about tonight. It's like, in all the time that I've known you, I've pretty rigorously questioned the things that you've said, just almost to like an asshole degree in a sense, just because I don't know, I'm not taking any crap or whatever. So in any case, at that conversation, I was really probing you, like, this thing that you say, did that come from Yuji or did that come from Desikachar?
Right.
We had a whole conversation about Yuji. For me, he kind of came into the conversation more than he had previously.
Right.
And we also got to learn all kinds of fun stuff about you. We got to hear about you riding your horse in the backwoods of New Zealand or whatever. That was fun. Mm-hmm. And the hashish trail to India and that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But getting ready to talk to you tonight, I was really coming back to this conversation I was having with you back in 2013. And really, wanting to, probe you and challenge you. And it's really because what I'm interested in talking about more than what I think anybody else might be interested in hearing, honestly.
Yeah, who cares about anybody else?
Sort of. It's a rare opportunity that I'm sitting here with you like this.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And so, the thing that I would say is there's something that I initially got from you or learned from you back when we met in, I believe it was 1999. And there's certain language that you use that I think has tripped me up, and maybe even other people up over the years. But there's an essential truth to it that absolutely has remained true. And it's become a really defining lens for me. And so I guess for the first kind of question I have, this first bit of language that I hear you say all the time, that's sort of where I want to begin probing, is and it's a little bit of a challenging question to start off with, honestly. I probably should be easing in, but I know you, so I'm just going straight to the punch, because you usually were someone who does that as well.
Go for it.
So you often say, and I believe the words are, Krishnamacharya brought forth these teachings from the great wisdom tradition. And you will say that, a lot of these branded styles of yoga, namely the Ashtanga Vinyasa system and the BKS Iyengar method, which are all both collapsing in a lot of different ways under their own weight. They are missing there's something missing from them that they didn't get from Krishnamacharya. And I guess my little bit of pushback on it is in the sense that clearly, no one would deny that Krishnamacharya, nobody would be doing anything that they're doing without him. But those branded styles, those two guys, those two men, let's just be specific about them, they were traumatized by Krishnamacharya. He was a very harsh, and I know it was a cultural thing. I think we even might have talked about that in our last conversation. But those systems were a result of traumatic experiences they had in the context of yoga teaching that was with Krishnamacharya. And then I had all these conversations with the people at Kripalu. I saw you at the Desikachar thing. Desikachar didn't do that to anybody, right? Desikachar didn't traumatize anybody in the way that was happening at the Mysore Palace.
Yeah.
So in a way, Krishnamacharya is just as responsible for what came about because of those traumatic experiences as he might be for what Desikachar passed on. Right? So I guess that's sort of my confusion. It's not this pure lineage of the great wisdom tradition that Krishnamacharya passed down to us in a sense, because other things that he did led to all the other stuff too, right? And I guess that's why I've always honed in on Yuji, because he seems to be a clarifying figure in that regard.
Thank you for bringing all of this up. And I love that your inquiry into this is so piercing and so demanding. You want to know about this. You want to get clarity on this yourself. And I would say, you see, we're at the end of time. This day is the beginning of every new day that's about to dawn for the next decade and 100 years and 500 years from now. And we're the ones who are alive. We're the yogis. And we need clarity on this matter. What is yoga? What is it really? And we are the ones to carry it forth. All of our teachers are dead now, and we're alive. So it's not a matter of just cleaving to some sentimental idea of some knower, somebody who was deluded enough to call themselves a guru, or clever enough to call themselves a guru, a knower, You're right. Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois were traumatized by their culture. India is the most misogynist country in this world. And Krishnamacharya appeared in that, and that they were young children with him, and they were definitely traumatized by their life experience. But I wouldn't single out Krishnamacharya as being a particular cause of their trauma. I think the culture is traumatized. Go to India today. Look how people are. But it's not just India, it's the condition of humanity is a traumatized condition. And what has happened through yoga is just another vehicle of that trauma. And we're only just now seeing the hoax of it, an elaborate hoax called yoga. And it's not just the styles that are the misogynism. Yoga itself has been branded. The word yoga implies a struggle in the mind and body towards a future ideal that the knowers, the gurus, the hierarchy, the patriarchy, like Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois, to name a couple of them, have used to create their authority. And the whole yoga thing has been branded as this denial of life, an effort, each individual's effort, manipulation of their body and mind towards a future possibility for themselves, which of course is the denial of the plain wonder and perfection that is their life already given.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
It just spills out of you. I see. To me,
there
I hear
we go.
that.
This is a serious statement.
I know. But it's interesting because earlier today, you kind of mocked a thing. You said you were talking about a radical non-dualist, and you were kind of like mocking this idea of like this radical non-dual. But to me, what you just said, like Yuji was the most radical non-dual guy I've ever met, and you're kind of like a close second. And what I mean when I say that is what I was writing about in the blog post that we were talking about, is this idea of radical meaning there's not qualifications around it. That there's this thing that is inherently us, this intrinsic wonder, wholeness, cosmic power, whatever you want to call it. Often, even other people who studied with Desikachar, honestly, like there's an agreement on that, but then there's often a but around it.
Right, well there's always a but, because non-dualism has been turned into philosophy and Dharma.
Okay, so what do you mean by that? When you say non-dualism is not philosophy or Dharma, what does that mean?
Well, you have non-dualism as an idea, and then you have people who are actually in the state of oneness with reality itself, with life itself.
Yeah.
And they have nothing to say.
There's nothing to say about it, that's right.
Because there is nothing to say.
Yeah. But does that mean being in the non-dual state would not... How does that jive with this idea of the ordinary condition being the thing? Like, the non-dual state meaning you can't function like a regular person and have a family and have a life because you're totally beyond time or whatever? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, you certainly can't function in the limits of the social behaviors that have been imposed on all of us. I think a person does... We are capable of dropping out of those limits and claiming our own actual life and having our life and having intimacy with life as it actually is. You know, the power of this cosmos that brought us here in the first place and is presently arising as this body, mind, you know, as heartbeat, breath and sex. It is possible for any person to enjoy that, because that's what they are. And this isn't such a fanciful, non-dual philosophical statement to be said, because I find that anyone from any education background or any social strata of any society, any country in this world, you sit quietly with them as a friend, you know, with affection to that person, and you say to them, you are the power of the cosmos. And it's the first time they've even thought about it, because it's not in the social structures of the society that they've been born into. They've been born to seek for truth or seek for God or work in the factory or work in the university in some clever science or something. And everybody's busy in this thought structure of their society that they've been born into. And so you sit down quietly with them and say, hey, you're the power of the cosmos. And they go, what?
Or they go, yeah, whatever, crazy ass.
Seldom, because if anyone gets into a stream of consideration, which is yoga teaching, they have a need. They're calling for real friendship and real help. And when a real friend comes and says, hey, you're the power of the cosmos, and that's a fact. This is not a spiritual statement.
Yeah.
It's not a philosophical statement. It's not a poem that you're the power of the cosmos. Mm-hmm. You say all that, and then people can start to think about it seriously, and they go, oh, hang on a second, I see what you mean. And that life is arising as a pure intelligence, how the body is functioning. And everything in the natural world is unspeakable beauty. Mm-hmm. And I find that people of all walks of life and all levels of education can hear those simple facts and go, shit, I see what you mean. And now yoga begins. Without that, there is no yoga. It's only a conventional struggle towards some delusion.
I mean, I agree. And I really take your point about the kind of idea or concept of non-duality, because I do like a little presentation on it. Mm-hmm. But that thing of like those ideas or those philosophical thinkings, mm-hmm. that really isn't it. Like the actual experience of it, to me, though, isn't, that's why I was kind of poking you, it isn't, oh, this person now is beyond time and you can barely deal with them because they're in this like reverie state of samadhi, right, and they can't talk to you anymore. It's actually a very natural feeling, yeah, of just like, I'm okay and I don't have to get anywhere. Yeah. You know, like it's a very natural, like I told you that story that you were so touched by. That my daughter wrote on her little thing.
Oh, I'm still
that
crying
said,
about that.
You know, the thing that my dad is good at is remaining calm. That's what it is, you see? Yeah. It's just that little feeling that she gets from me where, yeah, I have a sense of, even if I have emotional things happening or whatever, like underlying it all as the baseline, like you just said, like where it begins, yeah, is like, I'm totally okay, yeah, because I am the power of the cosmos. Yeah. And which is such a, it's such a, like the words are hard to say because it almost feels like you're propping yourself up.
Yes.
But that's the issue. We don't think of it's the chronic low self, yeah, image that we have.
And Jay, what a gift you've given to your daughter, a gift of nurturing, a gift of true fatherhood, for her to get that impression of you in her early life that will stay with her for her whole life. That my father knows how to stay calm. My father is calmness in the storm. What a gift.
Well, let's not go too far.
No, well, that's what she said. I mean, no, I think, no, I'd like you to own it. You know, yeah, this is what you've done for your family and your fatherhood. And it was deeply moving. I've never heard it before, a young child saying that about a parent. It's usually the opposite. You know, there's the usual statement from children is the drama of, you know, subject, object, and he this, me that, da 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 da. You know, So this is not a philosophical statement to say you are the power of the cosmos, and it's not a poetic statement. It's not a spiritual statement. And I find that people of all walks of life can soberly look at that and feel it as a fact. Feel it. And therefore, what is yoga? Yoga is participation only in that fact of life. And this is definitely what Krishnamacharya brought through in the accuracy of his teaching, that there's a right yoga for each and every person, no matter who the person is. That is their direct embrace of reality itself, of life itself. It's not a search for a future ideal. And U.G. Krishnamurti and also J. Krishnamurti came along in the lives of Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, and these people were serious human beings. And they were brought into yoga, and they became deeply curious about yoga and deeply curious about Krishnamacharya and Desikachar and what they were doing. And they added their serious consideration to a teaching which was already very good. And I say that U.G. Krishnamurti in particular held Krishnamacharya to the fire of his own teaching, and that is that yoga is participation only in the perfection of life which is already established, which is already given. And this is what we have from these the lives of these gentlemen together. And just to go back to your point, I'll say, yoga has been branded as by traumatized people who've created methods that create more trauma in the human life. And this is what has been popularized, branded as yoga. And our teacher...
And entrenched with monetary devices as well. Let's just put that in there, because now, even as someone who's trying to kind of push back on it, like on a professional level, it's like entrenched, like the money's all...
Yeah.
They managed to make that
commodified as you know, this is how commerce works in our world, is brand. You know, you create wealth through brand,
right?
And you get people into habit behaviors of brand participation and product marketing. And this is what has happened to yoga today. And we've seen it for 50 years now, how this took off in the US and around the world and created the public presumptions of what is yoga. And we saw how our teacher, who was the teacher of Iyengar in his childhood, was ignored, was curiously ignored in this popularization of yoga. And we saw that, but the branding was already so strong that no one could hear the alternative framework that was being offered years and years ago. You know, I first visited the US in '92 to get Desikachar's book, The Heart of Yoga, published, and I saw what was going on being called yoga back then.
Those were early days too,
and it was shocking to see.
It ramped way up after that. 2002 was a whole other level than 92. Is all I'm saying.
In '92, people were already, bullying each other in yoga studios around the US, and this, Iyengar visited Europe for the first time as a guest of Yehudi Menuhin in 1954. And he arrived with considerable youthful bravado and, athletic exaggeration, bravado, and business determination to do well as a yoga teacher. And he used Yehudi Menuhin's fascination to very quickly put his business in place, and this went all around the world. So when I saw it in '92, people had been given license all over the world to be rough with each other, to bully each other in studios in the name of yoga. And so I came after some year. It was 1973, I met Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, and then so 20 years later I came to, because I wanted to publish his book, The Heart of Yoga. And I came to LA and New York, and I saw what was going on, and it bore no resemblance to what I had been studying with Krishnamacharya and Desikachar. And I went back to Desikachar and said, "Are you aware of what's been called yoga in the West?" And he was vaguely aware. And it was very disturbing to him. I said, "Sir, your father's teaching is not at all represented in the West. No sign of it. And we must do something about this." And Desikachar said to me, "Well, please, if you can, please do something about it. I said, well, there must be a book. And I started to use the word mainstream. We must mainstream these ideas. And he loved that word mainstream. That's been with him all his life until he died. We must mainstream yoga.
I know, but you see, that's what I was just writing about. You see, you were somebody who still came to it when it was still had the 60s expand your consciousness aspect to it. And then a lot of folks, your generation, maybe the generation just after you, went to India, met the gurus, came back and mainstreamed it. Like it wasn't just Desikachar wanted to mainstream it, but they succeeded. The mainstreaming included all of this commodification and branding as well, you know. Like it all got mainstreamed, including the trauma.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying that what Krishnamacharya's scholarship brought through from the great tradition got ignored.
Okay, wait. So let's stop there. I'm sorry. I have to stop you there because when you say the great tradition, what are you referring to when you say that?
Well, I could go back to 10th century Ramanuja Acharya, the second great Vedanta Acharya. I mean, this is what I call the great tradition. I said the wisdom tradition of Veda and later Vedanta that arose from Veda. And this was the life in which Krishnamacharya was born into in his family that he can trace back to the 9th century, to his ancestors, to Nata Muni of South India. So I'm saying this is the great tradition in which yoga evolved and was held and was taught very seriously through great acharyas, great teachers, great Buddhas, realizers, great texts, sacred text.
And do you think that they were teaching the same thing that you just said to me about you're the power of the cosmos?
Totally. It was the ordinary human being's practical means to embrace, participate in reality that they called God. Difficult word for some people, but they called God.
Mm-hmm. Reality equaling God.
God, yes.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a profound, important teaching, and in the context of many philosophical points of view and religious points of view and cultures and language, of which Krishnamacharya, Tirumalai Krishnamacharya, was a scholar of all of it. He was born into a family of Vedanta scholars. He was a deeply knowledgeable man, unusually knowledgeable. And in this unusual knowledge that he had, he was also a scholar of yoga and a practitioner of yoga. And in his scholarship, he was making the emphatic statement that yoga is needed to actualize the beautiful ideals of faith-based systems of religious life. Yoga is needed, which is why he became 100% committed as his priority in his human 101 years to teach yoga and not to be a religionist. And he was offered those roles too. He was offered to be a great pontiff or a pope of enormous lineage, as big as Rome. And he turned it down. And he said, no, I'm here at the request of my guru, Rama Mohan Brahmachari, to bring yoga into the world. And this is what's so amazing about him, because that's what he did. But I'm saying the job hasn't begun yet. We've only just gotten started. We've only just got through this initial hiccup of the last 30, 40 years where the US branded yoga as obsessive, horrendous activity on innocent people, and making spiritual promises that if they bully themselves, all is coming. Do this exaggeration on yourself, practice and all is coming. It's a total hoax. What's coming?
Yeah.
The idea of something great coming is denying what is great already as life itself.
Yeah.
The whole thing is a patriarchal abuse of human beings.
Yeah, just as a little bit of a side note to that, as like a practical example of that, I was recently having a conversation with someone because I turned 47 last month. And I guess that's, a little more than midlife, depending on average lifespans. But I was sort of saying to my friend who's the same age as me that I think throughout my 30s there's this kind of underlying idea that there's a big break that's going to come, or there's like some success or some whatever, the thing that's going to come, the big break going to come some point. Yeah. But then, at a certain, I'm 47, you start to think, really, maybe that big break's not coming. Maybe this is just it.
Right.
And if this is just it, am I okay with that? And maybe a lot of us aren't, Like, so this, like the carrot dangling.
Yeah.
Is what is the issue, is what you're sort of saying, it seems.
Yeah, and what about this beautiful woman I live with and my 2 beautiful children in a beautiful garden on Mother Earth? What about that?
Right.
What's coming?
That's the break. I already got the break, already came.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are living your direct intimacy with life itself, and that's why you're very calm, and that's what your daughter feels, and that's what you're passing on to your daughter. So nothing is coming. There's nobody coming to save you. This is it. You think somebody's coming to save you, you're like a drowning man, you got your arm up in the water, help me, help me, help me. And you have been taught to do that some savior, some perfect person is going to come and save you. So you go, help me, help me, help me, with your arm up in the water, and all you have to do is put your arm down and start swimming in the water and enjoying the water, and the shore's about 20 yards away. And we don't need this imposition of hierarchy where there's a perfect person that's been proposed by culture that is simply implying that everybody else is not perfect, not yet perfect. And we put in this hoax of struggle, and yoga is one of those hoaxes of effort towards this future perfection. And this is the power structure that has created our societies, and this is why everybody's miserable, and this is why male and female are so dysfunctional in the social behaviors that have been dished up in our world through that hierarchy. So all we have to do is swim in our own life, in our own ground.
Well, I love this because it really reminds me of when I first met you. Like, when I first met you in 99, you were making these trips to New York, and you were the most, like, I just remember in my mind, you just weren't pulling any punches. Like, you were much more like Yuji when I met him, in the sense that you were like, oh, this is fucking bullshit. You were just like, you were like blowing my mind because you were saying something that nobody else was saying. You were like calling out the hoax like you're doing now, but let's just say you were doing it in a much less diplomatic way than you have developed over the years. Because from that point in time, from 99 on, I watched you, and I mean, you may have talked about this last time you came on, I can't remember, but I did watch you, do your darndest to mainstream some of this. And you were kind of out, you were on that circuit, of festivals and like big venues, and I watched you change your delivery some. Like you didn't pull your punches, but you found ways to say it that were less confrontational, shall we say.
Well, what I found was that the branding, you can't win against Starbucks and McDonald's.
It's true, they're too big and too scaled. It's too scaled, too much scale.
Yeah, you got to live in cooperation with them, offering an alternative in nutrition to them, but there's no point in banging those doors,
We tried.
Yeah. But however, in the maturity of mainly the US, people have begun to question the struggle and seen its failure. In individual people dying early and people developing all kinds of illness in their bodies and hip surgeries before people are even 55, and all this stuff that's going on. And so we're finally questioning it, and I feel now it is a time to speak more clearly about the fault of yoga, the cultural fault that is yoga, and to speak clearly now about what yoga actually is. And I do take your point about, Krishnamacharya was born into a misogynist society, so he wasn't free of his own patterning. And he, in his late life, died at 101 years old, he was well aware of that. He was a very honest man who was deeply confessed of what he considered to be his foibles with his sons and so forth, and with his early students. So that he nevertheless, despite his patterning by modern day India that he was born into, he was nevertheless probably India's greatest scholar and greatest learned yogi. And what he brought through in his scholarship is profoundly important to humanity. And what Desikachar, in his intellectual brilliance, his English-speaking capability, his early visits in his life to Europe as a guest of J. Krishnamacharya and U.G. Krishnamacharya, profoundly equipped Desikachar to be a translator, interpreter of his father's teaching, that we would never have understood. Krishnamacharya couldn't speak English.
Yeah, that was an overwhelming, clear thing that everyone I talked to who was the student of Desikachar, he was like this bridge.
Yeah.
Like he was the first one who, he was wearing Western clothes, and everybody says he was wonderfully normal or whatever.
Totally. There's even a text, the yoga teacher should wear ordinary clothes. The yoga teacher should be neutral. He should be a friend of everybody's. And Desikachar, at the age of 27, left his brilliant engineering career in a German company, and the request of his father became a full-time student. And it wasn't necessarily easy for him, because Desikachar, as a young Indian boy, was enamored by Western science and Western career. But he brought the brilliance of his academic mind and his scientific mind to his father's teaching of yoga. And what we have in Desikachar is pure gold for humanity in bringing clarity to the subject of yoga. And then TKV Desikachar became a dear friend of J. Krishnamacharya and U.G. Krishnamacharya. And there the story begins. They were profound realizers of their own tradition, these Krishnamurtis, radical realizers of their own great culture of India. And Desikachar was their yoga teacher. And really, J. Krishnamacharya was like guru, an honored elder of Desikachar. And then U.G., in its, thanks for using the term radical non-dualism, the wonderful U.G., he and Desikachar became very, very close as good personal friends. And I was very grateful there to witness that friendship and get to know U.G. myself as a good friend, as a good human being, and saw what he had brought to the power of yoga that had already come through Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, but U.G. as you might say, as a realizer, as a Jiva Mukti.
Well, just to jump in, I was surprised by how much that was expressed at the tribute.
Yeah.
Because I heard you talk about U.G., but I never heard any of those other people talk about him.
Yeah.
and everybody acknowledged that he was clearly playing a role there.
I loved seeing that too. And Melissa Forbes was there, who was Yuji's companion, close personal friend for the last many years of Yuji's life, particularly the last 5 years. And Melissa is well known in that world of Desikachar's students. And it was lovely hearing from Gary, for example, who had met Yuji, and the others just acknowledge and showed the photographs and so forth, acknowledge how important this gentleman was to Desikachar and to the teaching of yoga on into this world.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.